You know, she's just about close. And she lives in Reed City. The ODPC helped these two ladies on the end come to be here this weekend. Are you having a good time?
Wonderful time. Absolutely wonderful.
I know that they're having a great time. I haven't caught up with her yet until she walked in the door. And I'm going to turn the microphone over. If you've got a question, just raise your hand and ask the question, and three of them or one of them will answer. Okay? So the first, why don't we start out with your memories of the first club meeting, the first gathering, and then we can go on maybe to the first FunFest and what things went down. Questions? Okay, let's just have improv. Your memories of the first club meeting, how it started.
I had just graduated from high school in June of '63, and I'm not sure exactly when we got word of any kind of a meeting, but somehow L.G. Hickok, Bob Spinner from Elk Rapids, and my grandmother made connections. The Dulcimer my grandmother played was handed down to her from her grandfather. She really didn't know a whole lot about how to play it. It didn't take her long to learn when she had L.G. and Bob Spinner to help her remember melodies. They also helped identify some of the fiddle tunes that she was playing on the Dulcimer, tunes that she remembered from her grandfather. I think one of the biggest things that impressed me was the number of Dulcimers. I think there was 19 that showed up at the meeting, 19 Dulcimers. Not everyone was a player at that time. Were they like? There were people that brought their Dulcimers when they heard about it, and they said, this has been in the attic. I didn't know what to do with it. One of the biggest memories I have of that first meeting isn't so much who was there and what officers were elected or anything, but watching Bob Spinner play Never on a Sunday on the hammered Dulcimer. His hammers was flying as fast as any you'll see on the grounds today. Bob was extremely talented. We lost him to an auto accident in 1990, but he was my American Idol in that sense, as far as the Dulcimers were concerned. And it wasn't any problem for many of us to stay up late at night into the wee hours of the morning when Bob was able to leave his job from down here and perform with those of us who would stick around and wait for him just 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. Bob had a big impact on me, along with the Sinclair brothers, Arlene Coys, Jim Harold, and the list goes on. Unfortunately, we don't have, aside from Lilah and I, whose memories aren't 100% perfect anymore, we really don't have a solid record of all the people that were there that day. And we've been trying to collect names. The other people, besides my grandmother and dad and LG's family, the Hickok family that were there, and the ones I mentioned was my Uncle Allie Toms, my grandmother's brother. And just to explain how my memory works, it wasn't, people have been asking me for 2 or 3 days who all was there. It wasn't until yesterday afternoon, back behind the stage with Gail, I said, I'm missing somebody important. She says, who? I says, my Uncle Allie. It took me 2 days to put that name into the pile. So I'm going to hand this off to Lilah.
All right. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for coming and showing your interest in the history of it. And Doris is a wonderful scrapbook maker and has so much history about the farm and the people in it. And her books are over here on these tables. And if you want to take time while you're here, don't hesitate to pull up a chair and look at the scrapbooks even while we're talking, because it has a lot of interesting things in it. So feel free to go over and leaf through. We welcome you to do that. I do have some notes. If you can hear that last, this is hold it up close. So don't hesitate to take a chair or pull a chair up and look at the scrapbooks that my sister brought. They're wonderful. I do have some notes, and I'm pretty much going to read them because that note will just save you time. And you'll probably hear some repetitious things here that we all reminisce about. As you all know, the FunFest is sponsored by the original Dulcimer Players Club. And the first meeting of the club was September 1963. I remember sitting at the dining room table while Dad was trying to work out a good name for the club. And he finally decided on the original Dulcimer Players Club. And the reason for that was his hopes and dreams that this club would sponsor or inspire other people to start other clubs in other parts of the state and country. His dreams have fully come true because a few years ago I checked and there was over 200 clubs in this country and some clubs in foreign countries. Getting back to that first meeting, I was just beginning to get started, if you will. And I was pretty hesitant and apprehensive because can I really, do a good job of this? And then we walked in and saw Melva just playing and her dad just playing, and they inspired me too. The interesting thing was, the number that she said was there, as I recall, and they come from different parts of Michigan. And it was mostly older men, some of them in their late 80s and early 90s. My dad had scoured the state to come up with this many people to come to the first meeting. They each took a turn playing. And I had hesitated to play at home because I'd go up to the Dulcimer, but I couldn't make it sound beautiful like my dad did. And so I walked away in discouragement. That meeting, I noticed, as each one played, my goodness sake, they each have their own style. Maybe I'll never play like my dad, but hey, I can play something in some way. It was so interesting, definite different styles. And I'm going to jump ahead to 1976, the bicentennial country, and that's when they had some festivals in different parts of the country. People brought out their instruments, and they said, this was so much fun, we're going to do it every year. And from that, they had workshops and tapes and other ways to record. And then through the workshops and so forth, the playing became much more of a homogenized style of playing. But back then, it really inspired me because each one had a different style. I suppose there were around 50 at that first meeting. I brought my daughter, who was 3 years old, and she realized somehow that this was kind of an important thing. People were sitting around the edge of the big hall, visiting and listening to the music being played. And my daughter went around to each person and said hello and shook hands with each person in that whole hall and welcome. So I think even she knew that this was the beginning of something important.
She just offered to let us step in for a minute and make another comment. I would like each one of you who is here and listening to us go to the piano. There's 2 books over there. I'd like you to sign in with the instrument that you play, or if you don't play, don't worry about it. The other one is contact information. If you want to leave email address, phone number, whatever you want. The information for me is on the cover. Email address, phone number, so forth. It's there for you to take home with you. I live in southern Alabama now. She said jump ahead to FunFest. The first FunFest was September of 1972. It was 10-year anniversary. And that was my dad's instigation, I guess, saying we need to do something special for a 10-year anniversary. Following year was in June, I think, of 73. Like I said, memories are a little bit questionable. And it was in that June meeting that they decided that they arranged with the Fair Board to establish an annual festival the third weekend in July every year thereafter. So it's always the third full weekend from Thursday to Sunday in July. And I appreciate it if you spread the word. I will tell you at one point though, I found out, I don't know if you know this or not, Lilah, they had to stop advertising the FunFest in the AAA travel catalog, travel magazine, because it was becoming so big. I think it's time we put it back in the AAA magazine.
Who needs it?
Word of mouth has always been the best market.
Lilah, you had some memories of the first FunFest and the stage shows. Can you tell them about the first presentation we have here?
I'm glad you brought that up. And I was going to add that my husband's work by that time had taken us to Kansas. And I had a card from Esther G. Cox letting us know about the first FunFest. So our family drove straight through and came up to the FunFest. It was held, Gail, what is the name of the building?
That's Exhibitors Building.
Is that Corey?
Yes.
Okay, it was held in the Exhibitors Building, and there were bleachers along the west side, and then the players would set up on the floor on the east wall, and she was the MC. And for years, she did a wonderful job of being MC for the FunFest. And my son Don and I played duets at that first FunFest.
I remember how cold it was. Our family happened to be home on military leave at that time. We camped out in a 30-foot camper that was up here in sleeping bags huddled together to keep warm because that September it was extraordinarily cold.
There was a visitor came in that first FunFest. She was from Virginia or West Virginia, and she brought her mom Dulcimer with her. It was the first one that I'd ever seen, and at that time, Mom Dulcimer, or Black Dulcimer, was not known yet. She went home and she was acquainted with Russell Blueberry in West Virginia, who was trying to keep Canon Dulcimer alive in that area, as well as my dad trying to keep Dulcimer alive in this area. She went home and got with Russell Blueberry, and he decided to begin a club down there, and that was the second club in the United States. My husband's work had taken us out to Kansas, and through a marvelous turn of events, we met Harvey Crimmins, and they were living about 5 miles from us. Each of our families said nobody in Kansas even knows what a Dulcimer is. And by a miracle, we got together. They came over to our house when they saw an article in the paper. It was like long lost relatives, and we were good friends ever since then. So in 76, 77, we started the Prairie Dulcimer Club. That was the third club in the United States, and it was as a chapter of the original Dulcimer Players Club.
And I will make an open confession. When we moved to Alabama, I kind of I won't say I lost interest in the Dulcimer, but it just didn't take priority. And it set in the corner with a cover on it way too long. I'm making a commitment and a promise to you today that it will no longer be in the corner with a cover on it. When I take it back, I'm going to be practicing, and in Oktoberfest in Alp, Alabama, it will be on stage if they'll let me play. I was very excited the first Oktoberfest I went, as people were walking around with Dulcimer t-shirts on. It was the mountain Dulcimer, not the hammer Dulcimer, and I got cold feet and never took the hammer Dulcimer to the club meetings. I never attended one.